Hi, I'm a climate scientist. So I and my colleagues are the reason we know that climate is changing, that humans are responsible. Yes, we really have checked, and we are the ones causing the planet to warm, and that the impacts are serious. Yet every day on social media and in emails and sometimes even letters that people send me, I hear objections. How do you know this thing is real? How do you know it's humans, not a natural cycle or volcanoes? And it isn't bad. There's nothing we need to do about it. These objections are so common, so frequently voiced, that even though we have great answers to all of them, we know it's warming because of thousands of thermometers around the world, ocean buoys, satellites, and more. We know it's us because we've carefully checked every other reason, and we know it's bad because the impacts are already here today. Even though we have solid answers to these zombie myths, so to speak, we often think that the problem is people don't know enough science. People need to be more educated. They need to understand more science. But that's not the real problem we have. Because if people truly didn't believe the science of climate change, they wouldn't use stoves or fridges or airplanes either. It's the exact same physics. No, the biggest problem we have is not the gap between people who say it's real and people who say it isn't. The bigger gap that we have, the one that's really preventing us from taking action on this issue, is the gap between those of us who say it's real and those of us who think it affects me. When you survey people across the United States, well over 70% say yes, climate is changing. It will affect plants and animals, other species, not humans. It will affect future generations. It will affect people who live over there in developing countries, but it won't affect me. That is the biggest gap we have. Because if you say, yes, it's a real problem, but it doesn't really matter to me, why would we ever want to do anything to fix it? Here's the reality, though. Climate change is not only a future issue, it's actually here right now. Climate change is not only affecting people over there, it's affecting us. Climate change doesn't only matter to plants and animals. After the polar bears, we're next. Climate change affects our health. It affects the air that we breathe, the food that we eat, and the water we drink. It affects the safety of our homes. It affects the stability of our economy and our geopolitical systems. Climate change literally affects everything that is already at the top of our priority list today. It isn't a case of saying, oh, well, climate change is number 29 and I need to move it up to maybe number 8 or maybe number 7 or maybe number 2. No, I don't think climate change even needs to be on our priority list at all. And I'm a climate scientist. Yeah, I don't think it needs to be on our priority list at all. Why not? Because the only reason I care about climate change is because of what is already at the top of my list. At the top of my list is my son, because I'm a mom. It's the fact that I want the place where I live to be a safe place to live. I want to know that there's a healthy future for my son and his friends, my nieces and nephews. I want to know that there's still going to be snow in the winter because I love skiing. I want to make sure that there aren't all these invasive species moving in here, bringing pests and diseases that affect our food. And most of all, I want to make sure that the poorest and most vulnerable and most marginalized people, right here in North America, as well as on the other side of the world, are not being disproportionately harmed by the impacts of a problem like climate change that they have done almost nothing to cause. I care about climate change because of who I already am. And because of that, who you already are is the perfect person to care as well. Wherever you live, whatever you care about, whatever your abilities or talents or interests, you already care about climate change. And if you don't think you do, you just haven't connected the dots between what's at the top of your list and how climate change is affecting those things. You might be an athlete. You might enjoy food. You might just like going to beaches. In my new book, Saving Us, I talk about how climate change affects every single one of us. And I think, it's going to be impossible for you to read that book without seeing yourself somewhere and understanding that, hey, yeah, it actually affects something that matters to me. But that's not enough. We have to fix this problem too. And how do we fix it? I'm not going to lie, it's going to take a really big change. It is going to take a system-wide change. Changing our light bulbs, eating more plants, even getting solar panels on our roof, those are all good first steps, but those alone are not enough to fix climate change. We need system-wide change. How does that happen? Well, the world has changed before. Slavery, giving women the vote, civil rights. How did the world change back then? Was it because a president or a prime minister or a CEO or a celebrity decided it had to? No, it was because ordinary people used their voices to talk about why it mattered, how it was unjust, and how the world could and should be a better place. Every single one of us has a voice. And by using that voice, that is how we can change the world. The power of storytelling is immense. Did you know that neuroscientists tell us that when we listen to somebody tell a story, our brain waves actually synchronize with theirs and we enter into and share often their emotions? Storytelling is so powerful, and that's why I'm so excited about this initiative, because climate change is not just something that we talk about in nature documentaries, although there's plenty of those that are great. Climate change is something that we can talk about in terms of the future of the human race. It's in the Marvel movies, right? It's in the Kingsman movies. Climate change is in comedies, it's in action movies, it's in kids' cartoons like the Octonauts. Climate change is a human issue that relates to all of us. And so as we tell human stories today, climate change is always there in the background of our stories. Both talking about how it affects us, whether it's wildfires burning greater area across the western U.S., whether it's bigger, stronger hurricanes inundating cities along the Gulf Coast, whether it's devastating heat waves or longer, stronger droughts, talking about how climate change affects our lives here and now today, but also talking about the solutions, talking about how clean energy brings jobs and cleans up our air and our water, talking about how being more efficient and less wasteful with our food and our energy saves us money and allows more to go around. Talking about nature-based solutions, I love those, where we invest in restoring ecosystems, conserving ecosystems, yes, planting trees too, and they suck up carbon out of the atmosphere, they provide habitat for wildlife, and they clean up our air and our water. It's a win-win-win. So when it comes to climate change, we all have a role to play. And that's why I called my book, Saving Us.